welcome back to the Variety Show, Season 4, Episode 2. Here with Chris Ballew from the Presidents of the United States of America. You may remember the band for a massive slew of hits in the mid-90s and also into the 2000s, and also with various media spots here and there. So, hello and welcome to the Variety Show with Liam.
Why, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be asked to be anywhere these days.
Yes, I mean, the band still has longevity in media, like I said earlier, and just seems still to be remembered. So what does it like feel to have the band still be remembered after all these years, like still be known and played?
Yeah, it's a dream, really. I mean, I grew up on the Beatles. Basically, I only listened to Sergeant Pepper's from the time I was 3 until I was 10. So I got a sense of what it took to make a record that would live on beyond your, arc of fame. And I guess I always aspired to make something that would remain long after I'm gone. And I think I did it. So I feel pretty proud and really happy about what we achieved. When we were together in the 90s, things got so chaotic and crazy that we couldn't really see how great it was what we had achieved. And then we got back together in the 2000s all the way up till 2015, and we got to really enjoy it. So it's kind of like this savoring of a job well done.
Yes, I believe so too as well. I think when I first came across the band, it would have been Cleveland Rocks, which became the theme to the Drew Carey show. So how did
Yeah.
you get across to that, and how did you get the gig to say from the guys from the Drew Carey show, oh, we're going to use this as the main theme of the show?
Yeah, that was a great experience. So we were on a talk show. Rosie O'Donnell, actress, comedian, she hosted a talk show in the 90s for a little while. So we were on, and Drew Carey was another guest. And as we're waiting for the show to tape, we were sitting in our backstage area, and Drew Carey came and knocked on the door. And he had a couple of supermodels, one on each arm, which was hilarious. And he came in and we just hit it off. We hung out for like 15 minutes and had a great time. And then he called our management later and said that he'd like us to re-record this. I guess they had a theme song, but they wanted to revamp it. So we were basically given instructions: cover this song, and we will make it the theme song to the show. So it wasn't like we had to demo and compete or pitch them on the idea. It was really Drew's idea. So yeah, it was a pleasure to do. A really fun song, great song to play live, which we've done in Cleveland many times at like halftime of the American football game and all that kind of stuff. And at the very end of the recording, little Easter egg, that's Drew Carey saying, Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. He called in to the studio on a phone and said, Ohio. So he's on the track as a guest vocalist. But we've run into each other over the years, and he's part owner of the other kind of football, soccer team here in Seattle. So we've done stuff with the soccer team, and we've seen him, and it's always a pleasure. So he's a happy little fifth president or fourth president. Sorry.
Yes, an unofficial member of the
Yeah,
band, which is
exactly.
great.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the start of it all. So the Froggy Star cassette demo tape, that was like the very start of it all. That was about 1993 when you guys did your early gigs.
Yeah.
So where did that come about?
Well, we were just playing music to keep ourselves from being terminally bored. There were no phones back then. So in order to not be bored, we made up songs and practiced them and then played shows. So that was really all we were doing at first. And we saw this ad in the paper. It was like 12 hours of studio time for $350. You can do whatever you want. So we're like, let's make an album kind of. And we go in and we did the songs just like we did them live. And we took 13 hours, but we walked out with a finished I don't know what it was, 12 or 13 song cassette thing. So we called that a demo, sold it over the bar where Jason, our drummer, worked. He just was, pouring beers and selling cassettes and pouring beers and selling cassettes. And I was on tour with Beck, and I called Jason one day and he's like, you got to come home. This thing's blowing up. We got to get back to work. So we did. And then it kind of morphed into becoming a real record with Conrad Uno at Pop Llama Four of the songs from that Froggy Style cassette made it on the final debut record, and the rest were recorded with Conrad. And we put it out on his independent label, and we then got signed to Columbia, and we remixed a bunch of stuff and remastered things and released the Columbia version. So the album kind of staggered toward final version. So yeah, we actually released Froggy Style as a vinyl LP last year. So if you want to get that, you can.
Yeah, I'll be definitely looking to try and get in that just to see what the popular songs sound like back then before they made it onto Columbia. So that'll be
Yeah.
something to do. A great defining piece of sound of Presidents of the USA is those two-stringed basses and the three-string guitars. What was the reason for halving the strings on the instruments?
It was I was on my way to a two string, but I was playing with four on an acoustic guitar when I met Mark Sandman, the lead singer, songwriter, and slide bass guitarist in the band Morphine. I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. I met Mark. We ended up hitting it off, and I ended up living with him. And he was experimenting not with a version you could play with a slide, but a version you could play with your fingers. The action was low enough. I picked that up. And in fact, I don't know if you're going to use the video here, but this is that guitar right here. This red guitar is the guitar that Mark had set up as a two string. And I picked it up and just played it for a second and went, that's it. That is my sound that I've been looking for. It was so refreshing because I could really kind of wear my influences on my sleeve to me overtly. Like, this is my Kiss song. This is my Buzzcock song. This is my Sex Pistols song. But to the listener, it didn't sound like I was ripping anything off because it's being filtered through this weird instrument. So that was really cool because I love to genre hop and kind of pay homage to different genres, country and pop and rock and roll and heavy metal even. And then this guitar over here, for all of you viewers who can't maybe see me, is the guitar that I played on the debut. A little Japanese Kawaii guitar that I saw in a pawn shop. It was $75, and I had no hesitation. I didn't even play it. I just took it off the wall and said, I'll take it, and walked out. So that thing's super magical. $75 investment and 5 million records sold. I think that's a good return on my money. So yeah, really, it was just sort of finding that freedom of expression with an instrument that was unique and unlikely, and made my soul feel good. So that's why I chose it.
Do you have the V-neck guitar from the 2 era from 1996 with you, or is that long gone?
That got smashed.
In everything rock and roll fashion.
Yeah, everything got smashed except for those two guitars, the red one and the Kawaii. Yeah.
So that leads in very well into our next one, the story of the mega smash hit Kitty.
Oh, Kitty. Well, that was while I was living with Mark, actually, right around that time when I picked up the two string. We were having a little jam in the living room. And the cat that lived in the loft space where he lived with his roommate, Amy, named Chima. Chima came into the jam space, and we we're kind of playing, and Chima's circling around. And now Chima had a bad reputation, though. Historically, Chima would come and, kind of saunter around your legs, basically sending every signal like, I want to be petted. But you reach down to pet her, and she would just just attack your hand. So I'm singing as we're jamming, kitty at my foot and I want to touch it. Kitty, it's just what was happening. There was a kitty at my foot and I wanted to touch it. So anyway, for a long time, it was just that. It was just kitty at my foot and I want to touch it. And then instrumental, the verse part, but no lyrics. And when we were getting the band up and running, I was like, oh, I had this fragment, kitty at my foot and I want to touch it, no verse lyrics. So I wrote some lyrics and we adapted it as a 3-piece band.
And then the music video, obviously, for that one. What was the idea behind this one?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that music video. It's a little, I don't know what Roman was thinking. He's the director on that was Roman Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's son. He made, I think, 4 videos with us, and 2 of them were amazing and 2 of them were terrible. And Kitty was one that was terrible. We didn't release it at the time because it was just too dark and brown. The idea was that the camera was the point of view of the cat, but you really didn't get any cues to solidify that idea at the jump from the beginning of the video. So it just felt like an unnecessarily herky-jerky, weird camera movement. And we're in bathrobes outside. We don't look very good. We look all pale and weird. Anyway, but we did have professional stunt animals on that. We had a stunt cat, we had a stunt mouse, and a stunt dog. So that was an interesting experience working with stunt puppies. But overall, kind of not our greatest work as far as the video goes.
As far as the video goes, but the song was a mega hit here in Australia. I think I was looking back on the charts, it was like number 4 or something at the end of the year on Triple J's Hottest 100. So it must have made a big impact. So I don't know,
yeah,
probably something there.
We loved coming to Australia. Australia was where we were the most loved by far worldwide. That was our toppermost of the poppermost, as John Lennon used to say. That's where we had to like use fake names at hotels. We had to run for cars. Otherwise people would like swallow us. In fact, my secret name was at hotels was Paul McCartney. I figured that would throw. Yeah, because Paul McCartney's name when they checked into hotels and needed a pseudonym was Paul Ramone, which is how the Ramones got their name. So there's a little bit of a history with hotel aliases with Paul McCartney. So I figured I'd continue it.
Nice. Okay, well, moving on from Kitty, we have Peaches.
Right. That has to do with drugs and sex.
Simple as that.
So buckle up. I had a crush on a girl. I took LSD and decided to go tell her how I felt, which is a really great plan. Take psychedelic drugs and then go pour your heart out. I went to her house, and it was in a part of Boston that was a lot of like low gray kind of industrial buildings, but her house was like this canary yellow, white trimmed, idyllic house. This wasn't the drugs talking. It was actually, cartoonishly idyllic, with a peach tree in the yard and a picket fence. We knocked on the door. She wasn't there. So I went under the peach tree and just started squishing peaches and kind of, yearning for her, but also kind of enjoying just like smashing fruit between my fingers. Went home, didn't turn it into a song. Didn't really think about it as a song. Later, I'm in Seattle. I'm waiting for a bus. This was in Boston, by the way. Then I'm in Seattle waiting for a bus, and a homeless man shuffles by, repeating under his breath, moving to the country, going to eat a lot of peaches, moving to the country, going to eat a lot. And I was like, that's interesting. What a weird mantra. And it stuck with me. And then I kind of remembered my experience from Boston and went, oh, I think that might be the chorus to a song where I talk about that experience. And then I kind of put that together. But I only had verse, chorus, verse, chorus. Dave Dieterer came up with the whole end part, music and lyrics. He came up with, millions of peaches, peaches for me. So it was a really cool, like, again, not to, call upon the Beatles so much, but it was a really cool Lennon-McCartney moment for us being co-songwriters on that track. So yeah, I love that song and love that memory. I never did tell the girl how I felt, actually. So it was all unrequited.
Anyways, and what about the music video? Is this the music video you're proud of? Is this one of the two?
Yeah, Lump and Peaches. I love those music videos. So yeah, we just had all we had was we'd like to be outside in nature. And that's all we had. So we got on the phone with Roman, and he was at the time enamored by Kung Fu movies, and he's kind of curious to see if he could pull off a fight sequence. And so he's like, how do you feel about being attacked by ninjas? And we're just like, yes, please. And so it was really him just sort of experimenting to see if he could put together a fight sequence. And I think it came out fantastic. And it's just so weird. Why would we be attacked by ninjas? Ninjas have nothing to do with peaches. So it was fantastic. I loved it. It was really fun shooting it too. And little like, all right, right now you're going to just fall backwards. So boom, fall backwards. And he put together all these little tiny shots to make a fluid sequence.
It's a brilliant music video. And I was showing for the first time this year when I was preparing for this from my father. So it was great to see that music video in action.
Yeah.
So
Loved
we
it.
move on to the big song, Lump.
Ba-ba-da-ba. Yeah, Lump was a fragment on a little cassette player where I would, if I had an idea for a song, I'd hit record and go deep, 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 deep. And so this tape got filled up. And so I was listening back kind of while doing the dishes and cleaning my room, waiting for something to grab me, like something to stand out. And the riff from that song was on there, but I have no memory of making it up. Usually when I hear those little riffs, I'm like, oh, that I was in the living room or I was outside or I was in Boston or Seattle. But this one I had no memory of. And but it struck me. I was like, and it was it's lump, it's lump, it's lump, it's in my head. And it was kind of I don't know, like a tumor or something. So it quickly moved to a third person, she's lump, or second person, I guess it is. And I just had this image. For whatever reason, everybody used to ask, what's Lump about? Well, it's exactly about what the lyrics say. It is a woman in a housecoat sitting in a river in the Amazon, confusing the piranhas, and she's not very bright, and she's sitting there. I don't know why I thought of that or what made me want to sing about it, but there's no metaphor. It's just that's it. So, and that weirdly, in the early days, that song was not a big hit with our original crowd. Like, a lot of our songs are kind of funky and twangy and country and bouncy. And this was kind of more of a like, da, 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 da. And people, I remember early crowds before we made a record were just kind of like, yeah, well, okay, that's an okay song. Get back to the bouncy stuff. So it was an interesting song to become a hit, but I'm very proud of that song. Every time we performed it, it was as if it was the first time. Every time I performed it, I felt completely present, super into it, excited to play it, sad when it was over, and ready to do it again. So that was a nice thing to have a single be beloved by the band members, as that one was.
Yes, and the music video is also another one you are beloved with as well, alongside
Yes.
vocals.
We actually made two music videos for Lump because we shot so much stuff that Roman put together two. This Lump A and Lump B. I'm not sure if we released both to MTV. I think we did actually. Yeah. So yeah, there's two. So I'm proud of both of them. And there's one shot that is the same in both. So see if your listeners can do a little digging and find out what that shot is.
Yeah. So there's another one that my parents always bring up from the first album, Dune Buggy.
Yeah, that was a fun one. When I was a little kid, it was kind of a memory of being a little kid, and I lost a little car, toy car, a police car, actually, and I couldn't find it. Couldn't find it. Eventually, I took the heat vent off the hole in the floor where the heat comes up, and there it was in the pipe. It had fallen through the little slats in the heat vent. And when I took it out, in the driver's seat and passenger seat were two spiders that were dead, and it looked like they were driving the car around. And it kind of stuck with me as a funny moment. And I somehow remembered that as I was playing that riff. But I changed it to a Dune Buggy because little police car doesn't really bounce. Little Dune Buggy does. It has a little bing bong bong. So it was alliteration. So yeah, it was just me writing like an abstract version of that childhood memory.
Another one of these songs from the first album that I absolutely just adore, and it was featured on Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, Bull Weevil.
Oh yes, that's a great one. I had that riff for a long time, and I didn't know what it was going to become. It didn't have lyrics, but it was just a go-to thing. I would sit down with the two string and go um, and then I ended up kind of writing it about my best friend from high school and college, Dale, who I had a duo with when we were in high school, and we loved Walla Voodoo, and we kind of tried to be Walla Voodoo with synthesizers and drum machines and guitars. And then we went to college together. We lived in Brooklyn after college together. We lived in Seattle together. We were constantly like playing music and stuff. But his big sort of issue with life was cleanliness. He was just kind of a slob, and our place was always crazy messy, like tuna cans with cigarette butts in them with half full of tuna and kind of dangerously dirty. And he didn't want to go outside a lot. He liked to play video games and draw the curtains in his room. And it's not like I was criticizing his choices, but I was just like, man, you're like a little bug who never wants to leave his nest. So it really, yeah, lyrically just was me kind of paying a friendly homage to my good friend's idiosyncrasies. And he knew it was about him and he was proud of it. He would come to our early shows and be like, "That's me."
It's a song when I watch the live footage from the Snow Job concert from Much Music in Canada, it seems to
Oh
pop
yeah.
off every time I watch it.
Yeah, that's another song where I was always excited to play it and sad when it was over. And yeah, just I love that song so much.
To quote Homer Simpson, you don't say you make it until Weird Al parodies a song, and he did just that in 1996 for Bad Hair Day with Gump. So when did
Yeah.
he approach you to say, I want to do this song for Bad Hair Day?
I don't remember the initial approach. He is a gentleman and he asks for permission, although he doesn't have to for a parody, but he likes to kind of make sure people are cool with it. And I'm sure we said yes, but more than the moment we said yes to him parodying us, I remember that we watched the video. I think it was just me and Al on our tour bus. I think when we were coming through LA, he came to the show, and then we were back, in the bus after, and he debuted the video for me with him in the room. And it was very memorable for him because it was the only time he'd ever debuted the video for the artist he was parodying while he was present. Years later, I was on a podcast with Mike Mills from REM and Dave Perner from Soul Asylum, and we were it was a Weird Al themed podcast, and we were sharing memories of Al. And somebody asked me, like, where were you when you first saw the video? And I couldn't remember. And I only have the memory I'm recounting now because I called Al and said, "Hey, man, I don't remember where I was when the video came out." And he's like, "What? You don't remember? We were together. We were in the same room." And it was like so memorable for me. So, anyway, needless to say, we've become pals. And over the years, we've collaborated. We've had him sit in with us countless times. Most notably, we did a cover of More Than a Feeling by Boston at a club in LA, and he sang the lead and played accordion. It was super fun. And I've dive bombed. I've whatever live show bombed his shows here and there. And we're good buddies. So yeah, I love him. And yes, it was a really amazing, like looking at that on MTV and being like, that is Weird Al being me. Wow. And I loved what he did with the song. It's a great video, great parody. And yeah, so aces all the way around.
Yes, it's a great music video, and he's always attention to detail. He's got the outfits and everything like that on point as well.
Totally. And the sound of his recording is amazing. It's like we have weird instruments and he managed to really capture those sounds. So I was impressed. He's a very impressive, very detail oriented songwriter and parodyist.
Yes, both on his original songs and his parody songs that make him most famous.
Yeah.
So we move on to now President number 2 from 1996, right here.
Right.
First song I want to talk about is Volcano.
Volcano. Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, my mom and my brother and one of my mom's friends and I were stuck in the volcanic eruption of Mount St. Helens. We were heading east. The mountain was here. It exploded and all the ash went west. We got caught in the ash fall. We got drove off the road. We got towed out of a ditch. We thought we might die. The windows were hot. It was quite an experience. The song I ended up writing wasn't directly about that experience, but I just had like, a near death volcano experience to draw on a little bit. But the song lyrically was me really paying respect to a band called Menthol from Chicago. They were on Capitol Records, and I was on the Capitol Records mailing list for some reason, and I got their record. And I loved it. Their lyrics were so dense and poetic. And I was like, I want to write a song that's like, really lyrically dense. So I just kind of took the metaphor of a volcano and a boombox and kind of cross pollinated the language around those two items for some reason. And I was really proud of that song because also melodically or, instrumentally, it was kind of more complex and had changes and a key change. And so it was a little bit of like, all right, let's mature a little bit as lyricists and songwriters. And I kind of feel like that was the embodiment of that urge to kind of get a little more complex And that was another song that was really, really kind of a little hard to play live because it was kind of complex, but satisfying to play live for sure.
I think the cool thing about the CD I have here is the Australian limited edition tour one, so it has live tracks from across the 1996 tour. Will the masters ever be found from the tour and released as full concerts? Do you reckon?
Ah, boy, I don't know. I don't have that in my archive, so I'm not sure how we would find that. But there is a live show that surfaced recently. The guy who did sound for us, Craig, back in the 90s, he recorded our last show in January of 1998. We, of course, got back together 5 years later, but and he's sent some of that to us, and it sounds amazing. So I think we're going to make a live record out of that recording. So there is a live record of our last show that we're slowly simmering on the back burner.
Oh, that's excellent. Moving on to a song that I absolutely adore from you guys, Mach 5.
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, I used to love, like, that little police car that had the spiders in it that I found. I had other cars. And if I got kind of tired of a car, I would take it outside and I'd find a rock and I'd find a hammer and I'd smash the car with a hammer, but slowly. So it looked like it was in an accident. I don't know why I wanted to make cars that were in accidents. But anyway, the song I ended up writing was sort of like a love letter to that urge to smash cars. And that's really what I'm talking about. But I think I had one that had a Mach 5 on the side, and I couldn't really bring myself to smash that one for a long time, and then I finally did. So I guess it was just about being a kid, destroying toy cars and turning that into, and that's one where, to me, I'm totally ripping off Kiss. I'm like, I'm in Kiss, nah, 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 nah. I want to rock and roll all night, kind of cross-pollinating with my dorky sensibility with that band's majesty.
Yes, and would that be referencing Mach 5 as in Speed Racer?
No, I wasn't referencing that Mach 5 at all. No. In fact, we got contacted by the Speed Racer people and got a cease and desist letter from them. But I still had the car because I'd saved it all those years. And I was able to show them, like, send pictures. We might have even sent them the actual car. I can't remember. But eventually they were like, okay, that's fine. It's not about Speed Racer.
Yes. And that was another huge hit in Australia as well, number 20. I think somewhat there. So, like you said, Australia, massive popularity.
Yeah.
So, Cheeky God.
Cheeky God, that's an old one. I made that up in the mid 80s on a 4-track, just with a guitar and a drum machine. And it actually was a song that I played with bands when I was playing with Dale back in high school and college and after college. That was sort of a staple of every band we did. So it kind of pre-existed. And I figured, it had never been sort of officially released. So we just did it the way, and kind of kicked it out a little harder than I had with other bands. And yeah, it was just kind of about that Brady Bunch episode where Bobby Brady finds the idol in the rubble and it causes trouble. Yeah, it's just and it was kind of based on, there was a band in New York called the Flesh Tones, and they had an album called Hexbreaker. It was like, it's a hex breaker, and it kind of had this like tribal vibe. So I was kind of like, taking a page from that playbook of this kind of like garage rock, primitive, drum heavy kind of thing. Sort of making my own version of Hexbreaker by the Flesh Tones.
Nice. So you do Pure Frosting, which, as we talked about earlier, Cleveland Rocks came from that one, but also Video Killed the Radio Star, which got featured then on The Wedding Singer.
Yeah, that album was something we put together after we broke up because we realized there was kind of good enough leftover bits and bobs and a couple live tracks that it made a record. I really like that record. It's looser than 2 in a way. When we made our second record, we were pretty tired. Our management said, you got to take a year off or something. And the record label was like, no, keep going. And we kept going. And anyway, by the time we broke up and put Pure Frosting together, it was a delight to listen to all those fragments that were kind of left over. So yeah, Cleveland Rocks was on that. Video Killed the Radio Star, which I've just always loved that song. I feel like that song is this like pop perfection. It was the very first song played on MTV. Me and Dale were there when MTV came online. He had cable and he had a massive projection TV in the basement. So we like saw it go from static to like dan 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 dan, and then Video Killed the Radio Star came on. It was amazing. So that was just out of love for that song, you know, and making the video for that song was so fun. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not in wide circulation, of course. We worked with Doug Prey, who's a documentary filmmaker who's super talented, and had a fantastic time making that video. And in that video, I hold up a sign that says, "I quit." So that was sort of our farewell, although it wasn't our farewell, but you know, we intended it as a farewell.
Yes. Then we move a few years later into 2000 with Freaked Out and Small, which doesn't really get talked about that often, but one thing I would like to point out, whose dog is it on the cover art?
That's Dave's poodle, Stanley. Yeah, Stanley, very intelligent little doggy. Hold on, let me put this away. Yeah, that's Dave's dog, Stanley, the intelligent poodle. That record is interesting because we were broken up when we made it. There was a company called Music Blitz that wanted to make records, compilations of bands you've heard of playing new songs. Like, so it'd be 12 different bands playing one song they've never released anywhere else. So we did a song called Jupiter and loved it. And the label loved it so much, they were like, why don't we just do a whole President's record? And we were into, you know, we were hanging out together, and actually we had started a band with Sir Mix-a-Lot called Subset. So we were already in the studio being creative, and I had all these songs that were really meant for 4-string bass and 6-string guitar that didn't translate to the 2-string. So we mined those songs and recorded those for that album and did it in 10 days, low pressure, super fun. And it wasn't meant to be a comeback or anything. It was just like a nugget to throw out in the world because we were inspired, even though we weren't really a band at the time. Music Blitz, unfortunately, promoted it as our big comeback. And then when we did get back together and made Love Everybody, which was our comeback album, radio stations had been burned by the sort of weirdness of Freaked Out and Small and hadn't played it. And so it was a mixed message when we made our record Love Everybody. And so Freaked Out and Small ended up being a little bit of a thorn in our side when we really did come back together. But I love that record. It's so like just bombastic and distorted and nutballs. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, there's a great highlight off the album, Tiny Explosion, which was one of the only few singles that was pulled off from it.
Yeah. Tiny Explosions. I don't know what that's. You know what that song's about is I was at we shot it at a music store because it was at that music store where I picked up a guitar, a little 3/4 scale Fender Jaguar, and just started playing that Tiny Explode. And I started singing it in the music store, and I bought the guitar, took it home, recorded it as a demo, showed it to the band, and we did it in that 10-day stretch where we were making the record. And I still don't know. I think Tiny Explosions is just like, I don't know. For me, it was just like the joy of playing a rock and roll riff and just loving the bursty nature of music in general. And it's just tiny explosions of like joy from playing a kick-ass riff on guitar.
Yeah, Fuji is the same music store, the same one that you shot in for the music video.
Yep. The Trading Musician in Seattle.
Nice. So we now move on to 2004's Love Everybody. So this is the comeback. This is
Correct.
the one that you were meant to be hyping up, but then Freak Down Small kind of got left in the dust. So we now return to form.
Yeah, return to form, 2-string, 3-string instruments, and made with the intention of playing shows and all that stuff, which unlike Freaked Out and Small, which was just made as a recording project for fun. So Some Postman is Grooving was I don't know if was it Some Postman or Some Postman is Grooving. I can't remember.
Some Postman.
Some Postman. That was the first single. I love that song. It was super fun. It was just sort of me writing a poppy, what I thought was like, a poppy alternative radio hit kind of musically. But actually the song came together really fast without thinking. My friend Ramona lived in New York at the time. I sent her a CD full of music that I was working on, and she never got it. I was talking to her on the phone, and I said, well, Some Postman is Grooving to that thing. And I went, whoa, that's a song title. And she's a songwriter too. So I said, all right, challenge. Super Challenge. She was around when Mark and I were doing an improvisational. Mark Sandman and I were doing this improvisational band, and we would make up songs live on stage. And so that was called the Super Challenge. And so I said to Ramona, Super Challenge, let's both write a song called Some Postman. And I hung up and wrote mine and recorded it in 20 minutes because it just flowed. I'm still waiting for Ramona's. She still has not done her part by writing her song. So, but yeah, it just kind of spilled out of that comment on the phone.
Yeah. And the music video, obviously, as you've mentioned on YouTube, is the first ever one, first major one to film with cell phones. So what was that
Yeah, I mean,
idea about using like 20 cell phones to capture the band?
it was more like 100 cell phones. They were all over the place and on these big trees of cell phones. And they had to have all these, people hit record on them all so we could do a shot. It was kind of complex. I don't know. I think that was the video director's idea. I don't remember whose idea it was to use.
Grant Marshall, which was a great
Yeah.
Australian
Oh,
sort
is
of
he? Okay.
producer, director who does a lot of
Okay.
advertisement stuff.
Okay, great. I'm sure it was his brilliant idea. So I'm going to give all credit to Grant Marshall for that one. But yeah, we were also trying to be like a first at something, I guess, or maybe that was his idea too. So yeah, it's a fun video. It's, just a performance video, letting our personalities kind of do the work. So
Is there any other songs from that album you're proud of and you want to share some backstory to?
let me see. I have to look and remember no, I should do it off the top of my head. Let me think. Oh, Highway Forever. I loved that song. That was basically me trying to kind of rip off Chris Isaak. He had a song called Drivin'. It was like doom 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 doom, but it was really laid back and cool and everything. And so I kind of wrote my own version like that. But then when I gave it to the band, we just ramped up the energy. So it was kind of a riff off of that Chris Isaak song, but which is also a riff off of a lot of other songs that do that kind of thing. So that one stands out. That was a really fun one to play live because we would do this whole crazy, third verse breakdown improvisation stretch, which we used to do in Back Porch too. And I always loved those little moments where I could just be weird and unplanned and unscripted. So yeah.
Yes, you bring up Back Porch, and that's another one of my favorite songs from the debut album. So if we may go back to that one quickly, what was
Yeah.
Back Porch about?
Back Porch is about my dad. It was and will always be dedicated to my father. Just kind of imagining me growing into the age he was when I was a little kid, which is what I am now. And just kind of also looking forward to being old, just like it's not all about youth culture and being, like happy and settled and content and proud of your achievements as an older person. Just kind of like, I've been prepping my whole life to be an old man, basically. So I didn't want to I don't know. I just didn't want to be defined by the young version of myself. I want to also look forward to the old version. So that was kind of what it was about.
Yeah, and like you said, it's another funky song you like to break down live as well.
Yeah, totally.
So These Are the Good Times. People came out 2008, and there's a really great music video, and a familiar face comes in to direct it, Weird Al, for Mixed Up Son of a Bitch.
Yeah, that's right. So that album is interesting because we have a new guitar player, Andrew. In 2003-ish, I think it was. No, 2004 is when Love Everybody came out. A little later that year, Dave had to step aside. He had family obligations and he just had to do what he had to do. So Jason and I didn't want to stop. So we found Andrew McCaig and he fit the bill. And he's a little more like, a little less kind of, Dave had like a range from clean chicken picking to hyper fuzz, which he used rarely. Andrew was a little more like always fuzzy to extremely fuzzy. So the whole live show kind of got more, kind of muscular, I guess would be the word. So yeah, we made These Are the Good Times People with Andrew. And yeah, we approached Al, like, let's collaborate, do something together. And he came up with this whole flip book idea. It was very mathematically complicated. We had to do a whole session where we shot what was going to be in the flip books, and then we had to have the flip books made, and then we had to get good at sort of, letting the flip book do its thing in time to the music. Turned out I could kind of do it. So I ended up doing a lot of the flip book stuff, and Al could do it too. So a lot of times you see the two hands in any shot are me and Al kind of, and it took a lot of takes. And then it gets on YouTube and it gets smaller, and then the book is small. So I didn't really calculate how small the action was going to get, but yeah, he just brought his weird sensibility to it and did a great job. So that was a really fun collaboration with him.
What's the song about as well?
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. The song. So when I was living in Boston, I was desperate to make money. I didn't want to, get a real job. So I put up posters in my neighborhood that said, if you're a singer-songwriter and you have a song you want to record and you don't have any gear, I've got a 4-track and some mics. I wasn't looking to record bands, but singer-songwriter kind of thing I could handle. And I got a couple phone calls, never really got a bite on it. But one person who called was this girl who was just completely confused by delusions of grandeur. She thought she was like the second coming of Jesus and just went on talking to me as if she's negotiating this massive deal and when she takes over the world. And I just thought she was mixed up, like it wasn't about the moment. She was like so focused on the future and what was going to come when she was so famous. And so it started out as a really slow, quiet song, like she's a mixed up son of a bitch, kind of a Tom Petty. In fact, I actually sent the song to Tom Petty to see if he wanted to cover it. He didn't, but it had a little bit of a laid back Southern Tom Petty drawl. And then we, as a rock band, we kind of turned up the volume and made it, kick ass. So yeah, I don't know what happened to her. Maybe she made it. I'm not sure. Maybe she's Lady Gaga. I don't know.
Who's the nerd? Who's the nerd? Ladybug.
Ladybug was just sort of a love song for my then girlfriend, now wife, Kate. Just, a little bouncy country love song, basically. Kind of maybe a little bit hearkening to what's that song? I'm going up country, that thing, like a little kind of little funky proto bluesy riff that I just enjoyed playing. So yeah, love song.
Yes, another love song for the catalog. Rot in the Sun was another great music video as well. I think Weird Al did something similar for his own music videos, but yeah, Rot in the Sun.
Rot in the Sun was kind of like about how success the first time around was a mixed blessing or a mixed bag. It was fantastic to be, quote unquote, in the sun, the glow of success and validation and acceptance and success and money and all that stuff. But inside, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is really my destination. I feel like I have other things I want to do. We're getting very loud. My ears are hurting. The lifestyle's hard. Eating well is hard. Getting enough rest is hard. Taking care of yourself is hard. I couldn't sleep on the bus. We were driving all night and I couldn't sleep. So I was rotting in a way, but I was also in the sun. So it's really kind of about that duality of being successful, but also being kind of unhappy.
Nice. And then the last ever album you guys put out, kudos to you. This was a crowdfunder. So
yeah, we crowdfunded it just to kind of like get people involved in a way. Like when we did Freaked Out and Small, we thanked everybody who were those people? I think people, I don't remember what the source of those names were, but the thank you block was like all fans. And this time we just thought, well, that was a new kind of way to fund a record. And we didn't have a lot of cash sitting around at that time. So as a band, so we just decided to do it that way. And it was fun. It got people involved, made people feel part of the process. And really, I knew this was going to be our last record. So I'm like, I'm just going to leave it all on the studio floor or whatever. I'm just going to sing as hard as I can, play as hard as I can, have as much fun as I can, not stress. Because historically, I would come in with a song and I would kind of try to control the outcome as the songwriter, and have people play what I thought they should play. And there's a little tension there, and that tension gets kind of locked into the performances. And I had like this uptightness. And so that last record, I was like, you know what? I'm going to come in with fragments. I'm going to play a little bit of a verse, chorus, a riff, whatever. And if it doesn't catch fire with Andrew and Jason and we don't work together to make it happen, I'm just going to throw it away. So really, I was like really opened up to the band kind of collaborating with me and being, you know, a real three-headed monster. So that's when I listen to that record, that's what I think about.
Yeah, there's 13 tracks on here. Slow, Slow Fly, Crappy Ghost, Good Morning Tycoon, Poor Little Me, Rooftops in Spain, Stay With Me, Crown Victoria, Electric Spider, Finger Monster, Flea versus Might, Innocent Bird, Ohio, and She's a Nurse. And on vinyl only is Truck Stop on the Moon.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. That's
Yeah.
You did that all from memory, right?
Yes. I do not have a
Yes.
computer in front of me right here whatsoever.
Computer. What's a computer? What's a computer? I've never heard of a computer.
But yes, what is your favorite off that final album, do you reckon?
Wow. Hold on. I need to look at it now. Let me call it up. Kudos. Kudos. Boy, my favorites. I love them all. I love Slow, Slow Fly. That was an old riff that I had way back around the first record time. And so it was really fun to kind of find a lyrical perspective for that one. Good Morning Tycoon was all I had a band called the Tycoons, and our theme song was kind of Good Morning Tycoon. So that was another one that, you know, that band didn't go anywhere, but it was a song I plucked. Poor Little Me, super old. Wrote that in like 80, oh God, I want to say like 85. Rooftops in Spain, true story about a serious party we all had on a rooftop in Spain. Andrew's recollections are pretty much wrapped up in that one. And that one's in Spanish. Some of it is in Spanish. That's our first bilingual song. Stay With Me was another one from the early 2000s I had lying around. Crown Victoria, another one from the early 2000s. I just, whenever I'd rent a car, I'd rent a Crown Victoria, and it's what cop cars were back there in the 90s and 2000s. And I just loved my Crown Victoria. And John Roderick from The Long Winters sings backup vocals on that one. Electric Spider, that was sort of around for quite a while. It was originally about an imaginary drug called the Electric Spider. But I don't remember what I ended up thematically landing on there, but it's just a killer riff that I had that needed to come out. Finger Monsters from way back in the 90s. Jason and I made that up in a van. We were driving around, and I think I had a fragment. I had a guitar in the van or something, and Jason would sing, "Finger Monster, I am scared of you," in his little gravelly voice. So that was kind of a me and Jason song from back in the 90s. Flea versus Might originally was, oh God, what was it? Da, 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 da. Oh, This Is a Blitz. It was a song written for the mascot for our football team, the Seahawks. So we recorded it as This Is a Blitz performed it at halftime at a game or two before it became Flea versus Might. I didn't want to put a song about a mascot on the record, so I changed all the lyrics. Innocent Bird, really old, back from the like the late 80s. Just about, I don't know, about a little bird who was innocently caged. And I don't know what that song's about. It's about, I guess, like limitations or being trapped in your own, eddy of possibilities. I don't know. Ohio is a love song for Ohio, written way back in the 80s. Never saw the light of day. Finalized the lyrics while I was actually in Ohio before we recorded this song, because that's where my wife is from. She's a Nurse was written for this friend, a super fan, Carolyn, in Ireland. And she was going to study to be a nurse, I think. She never did, but it was sort of a love song for our number one Irish fan. And Truck Stop on the Moon, another old mid 80s, early 80s song. I was on it was like 87, because I was on a cross country trip with my drummer, Phil, in the band I was in at that point. And we slept in the car at a truck stop. And when I woke up in the middle of the sort of early morning, it felt like I was on the moon, because we were in the middle of the country, in the middle of the nowhere, isolated. and I just wrote that as a little abstract poem about waking up in the car. So a lot of these are old, and it was kind of like, clearing the decks. Like, all right, these songs need to be released. Let's get them out there, and then you know that'll be that.
Yep,
I don't
and
know if you were
brings
looking. I don't know if you were looking for a story for every song. I could. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too much
yeah, that's all right.
TMI.
That's completely all right. I just thought if there's any information that we should know about, then say so.
There you go.
So you have actually this only just came out a few days ago. You've brought all your solo stuff that you've done onto vinyl, on white vinyl.
Yeah, so I'm doing this new music now that I'm just calling Chris Ballew solo stuff. It's very different. It's kind of fuzzy guitars, a little psychedelic, lyrically abstract, kind of about being alive, being a conscious human with an ego and wrestling with that and life and death and kind of, broader human concepts than I've ever written about before. And so this vinyl album, I have 4 solo records out. Actually, I have 6 out, but the first 4, because they're too long to do as vinyl individually, I decided to take the best songs from the first 4, like the singles and some of my favorite songs, and put them on a vinyl album. So I'll do that every 4 solo records. I'll put out a vinyl. So I have 2 more to go, and then there'll be another vinyl, and on and on. I'm sitting on about 85 songs that are virtually done right now. So it's another case of a volcano of creativity that I cannot control.
Yes, hopefully it doesn't blow a hole in the side like Mount St. Helens did in 1980.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes. So, as we mentioned earlier about Australia, so when you guys first came out in 1996, what were your first initial reactions to the Great Southern Land when you first jetted and arrived?
Boy, just home away from home. We were so loved. It was so exciting to feel such incredible energy coming off the crowd. Yeah, we just felt immediately at home. We were touring with this band Custard, and loved them, loved their songs, loved them as people. The tour was fantastic. And then we came back several times since. So I've even gone down there. For 12 years, I made music for families, 0 to 5-year-olds, as Casper Baby Pants. And I actually played a couple of Casper songs at the Sydney Festival, or Casper sets at the Sydney Festival in, I think it was like 2014, something like that. So I've not only come down as the presidents, but I've come down as Casper Baby Pants to do a couple shows. Yeah, just nothing but love for Australia. Got to come back.
Yes. Will we ever get a president's reunion for next year, as it's a very big one? So will we get like maybe just like some photos together with the original lineup? Will something like that ever happen, or is that out of the cards?
Well, now we're thinking about releasing this live album from our last show. And that would entail working on it and getting it, in shape and all that for an actual release. That's pretty much all we have on the plate right now. I don't foresee a future where I will ever be in a loud touring rock band again. I think back on those times and the stress I put myself through, and the like unhealthy lifestyle and the noise and the sticky floors in rock clubs. And of course there's beautiful things about it, connecting with a crowd and playing music that we love and all that stuff, but I'm just too old, like I've done it. I've done it. And so, but I always say never. I had no idea when we broke up in 1998 that we would get back together and have another 13-year run and make records and all that stuff. So never say never. But right now I am super happy being quiet and mellow and making records by myself on my laptop in my studio at home. It's really nice.
Yeah, I guess for a final question before we end it off, the legacy of the presidents of the United States of America, since you've called it a day, what do you look back on it fondly, and how will everyone remember this iconic Seattle alternative rock band?
Well, I look back on it fondly in a way that makes me feel proud that we are kind of so unique and weird. That first record sounds so weird compared to what else was on the radio at the time. And I like that we did it our way. You know, we did make the songs the way we wanted to, and we recorded them the way we wanted to, and we played them the way we wanted to. We didn't try to be anything that we weren't, and that became successful. So I guess I would hope that people take away from it like, here's three dorks trying to rock, and they made it, and they made it big, despite the unlikely possibility that they would. There was a moment where Dave and I were getting in his car after a practice, and we were looking at each other over the hood of the car. And he said, you know, if some major label came along and signed us up and wanted us to tour all over the world and play these songs we're working on, I'd totally do it. And I said out loud, me too, while thinking, are you crazy? Nobody's going to pay us money to play these songs all over the world. These are ridiculous songs. We're just going to do them for fun, for our friends, you know, something to do on a Tuesday night. But I didn't want to crush his dreams. And turns out he was right. So anyway, I guess the thing would be yourself, let your freak flag fly. And at the end of the day, you will be proud of what you accomplished, whether you're like traditionally successful or not. And that's what's important.
I think the legacy stays true and true, especially here in Australia. When we look at the Spotify stats, all the major states are at like the top five. I think Melbourne's #1 on Spotify for most listeners. So it really says something that Australia has a great longevity. From my parents and my co-workers asking about the band, so it's still prevalent. Those who listened to it originally back in the day are still recalling it now and then as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that it's perennial like that. It just kind of flows on. I guess we made at least one record that debut that's sort of, you know, part of any complete record collection. You know, like you got to have that record. So to have made a record that kind of, you know, represents that necessity, kind of like, you know, Nevermind the Bullocks or the Clash's first, or, you know, the Clash's first album, or London Calling, or I don't know, you can name a whole bunch, but to have sort of tiptoed into that or snuck into that echelon a little bit is very gratifying.
Yes, and you can actually still find the debut album to this day. This was only found on the weekend at JB Hi-Fi in Melbourne Central.
Look at that. Still CDs are still happening. I love it.
CD is still king, so that is absolutely amazing. Well, thank you very much, Chris. It's been great to get to know a really iconic American band from the 1990s that still has prevalence to this day in music. So thank you very much for joining us on the Variety Show, Liam.
My pleasure, Liam. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And, you know, if I ever get back down there to Australia, I hope everybody comes out and, you know, hangs out with me. Even if I'm not playing music, we can just hang out. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So where
go to the Gold Coast.
Yes. So where can we find your music? Because the new vinyl has come out.
Oh, yeah. Basically, the place to go is chrisballew.org. So it's BALLEWCHRISBALLEW.org. And that'll take you to like the YouTube channel, and you can download the album for all the albums for free there. You can find also all these old cassettes and weird albums that I never released, and ambient music and art that I'm doing. So my website's kind of like a little window into my brain. And there's some rare stuff there that I just decided to give away for free. So check it out.
Yes, I certainly will be doing that after we're done with this today.
Cool.